Okay, welcome everyone to this explainer of the Berhan Bible documentary. Today, we are jumping straight into what is, honestly, probably the single most profound and just flat-out challenging question ever asked about existence. It's the ultimate tension, right there at the heart of both theology and philosophy. Who created God? It's a major objection raised by skeptics and a deep mystery pondered by believers. And you know what? Instead of just brushing it aside, we're going to walk through exactly how the source material actually tackles this head-on using ancient history, tight logic, and of course, scripture. So let's dive right in.
So I want you to picture this for a second. A little girl is sitting on her dad's lap. He's reading her a Bible story before bed. The room is quiet, the light is super warm and cozy, and then, completely out of nowhere, she looks up and asks this very question. Dad, who made God? He opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. He totally freezes. He realizes that despite a literal lifetime of faith, he actually doesn't have an answer for his 6-year-old. And that's the real hook here, isn't it? Because if absolutely everything needs a cause, doesn't God need one too? If we can't answer that, the very foundation of faith starts to feel like it's cracking.
Right. So to get to the bottom of this, the documentary actually pulls us way back into the ancient Near Eastern world. If you look at the neighboring nations around ancient Israel, places like Egypt or Mesopotamia, all their gods had these elaborate origin stories. They were born out of primordial oceans or spawned by other, older gods. It's like a giant cosmic family tree. But into that exact same world, Israel's God speaks from a burning bush out in the desert and introduces himself in a completely different way. There's no birth myth, no family tree, just a sheer, self-grounded claim to existence that frankly startled the ancient world.
When Moses asks for a name, God simply tells him, "I am who I am." And this name actually comes from the ancient Hebrew root word haya, which just literally means to be. The text is doing something highly intentional here. Think about it. At the exact moment you would absolutely expect an ancient religion to invent some grand, epic birth myth for its deity, the text flat out refuses to give one. It reveals God's identity not by who his ancestors were, but as sheer, uncaused existence itself. That is not the pattern of an invented myth, it's the pattern of a totally unique revelation.
Now you might be thinking, if I am was just one isolated verse, maybe we're reading a bit too much into it, right? But as you'll see, this is actually a completely unified scriptural theme repeated across 1,000 years of history. Look at this timeline. You've got Moses in 1400 BC praying that God is from everlasting to everlasting. Then jump to 700 BC, and you have Isaiah speaking of the everlasting God. Fast forward all the way to 90 AD, and John is writing in Revelation that God is the Alpha and Omega. It's an incredibly consistent theme across totally different eras.
And the crucial takeaway here is that this consistency is deeply anchored in the original language itself. We constantly see this Hebrew word olam popping up. Now, depending on the context, it can mean a really long duration, but specifically in these passages, it points to unending, absolute eternity. It's used to describe this boundless, limitless existence that was already there before the mountains were even born. The biblical authors, across centuries in vastly different circumstances, are all on the exact same page. God has quite literally always existed.
Okay, but here is where we hit the real philosophical roadblock. Doesn't everything need a cause? Well, the classic philosophical rule is actually misunderstood all the time. The rule is not everything has a cause. The actual rule is everything that begins to exist has a cause. Think about a chair, a star, or a human life. These things have a temporal beginning. They had a first moment in time where they suddenly were. God, according to the text, does not belong to that category. Asking who created God is honestly kind of like asking what is north of the North Pole. The concept just doesn't apply.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at the difference between two big concepts, necessity and contingency. A contingent thing depends on something else for its existence, like us, but Christianity claims God is necessary, meaning he exists without depending on a single thing outside himself. And look, this isn't just some convenient escape hatch that theologians invented. We use this kind of logic every day. Think about a timeless mathematical truth. Nobody sits around asking what caused 2 + 2 to equal 4. It doesn't begin in time, it just is.
So if we can establish that something can indeed be eternal and necessary, that actually opens the door to the strongest scientific and philosophical objection out there. Could the universe itself just be the eternal, uncaused thing? Like, why even bring God into the picture at all? Instead of just ignoring this, the documentary takes this pushback extremely seriously.
So here's how philosophers and scientists generally break that argument down. First off, arguing that the universe has just always existed in this endless chain of causes, what they call an infinite regress, doesn't actually answer the question, it just kicks the can down the road forever. Secondly, modern cosmology heavily points to cosmic expansion starting from a hot, dense state, which strongly suggests the physical universe actually did have a beginning. And purely logically speaking, something cannot cause itself, because it would literally have to exist before it existed, which makes no sense.
And this brings us right to where biblical revelation perfectly aligns with this logical reality. Genesis 1:1 plainly states, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." The ancient text isn't trying to rely on shifting modern physics models to make its point. It simply reveals that if the universe is indeed contingent, and if it had a beginning, then its ultimate explanation must come from completely outside of space, time, and matter. It points directly to the eternal creator.
Now, Christianity makes an even bolder claim than just God caused the universe. It claims that this eternal, necessary creator actually stepped foot into human history. Take a look at this remarkable quote from Jesus in John chapter 8. He's in this incredibly tense confrontation with the religious leaders of the day, and he looks right at them and says, "Before Abraham was, I am." It was a claim so absolute and so outside of time that the people listening literally picked up stones to kill him on the spot. So why in the world did they react with such violent hostility? Well, it's all about the specific words he used. The Greek phrase there is ego eimi, and that is the exact precise translation used in the Old Testament for God's name back at the burning bush. Jesus wasn't just claiming to be older than Abraham. By dropping this specific phrase in that specific context, he was directly connecting himself to the uncaused eternal existence revealed to Moses. He was claiming to be the eternal God right there in human history.
But wait, actually, some of you might be wondering about a natural theological curveball here. What about the book of Colossians calling Jesus the firstborn of all creation? Doesn't that imply he had a beginning? He was created? The documentary clears this up beautifully. In the ancient world, the term firstborn was primarily a title of supreme rank and inheritance, not strict birth order. For example, Psalm 89 calls King David God's firstborn, even though we know for a fact David was the youngest son in his family. It simply meant he was the sovereign heir. Jesus isn't the first thing off a cosmic assembly line. He is the supreme heir over all of creation. And let's be clear, this isn't just some modern spin we're putting on the text today. When the early Christian leaders gathered in the 4th century at the Council of Nicaea, they fiercely defended this exact truth against anyone claiming the Son had a starting point. They officially affirmed that the Son is begotten, not made. That phrase, eternally begotten, doesn't mean there was a moment of origin in time. It describes this beautiful, ongoing, eternal relationship of sharing one essence with the Father. Okay, so let's navigate some of the hardest pushback from honest skeptics. Is saying God is uncaused just special pleading? Not at all, because the rule applies to things that begin, and by definition, God didn't begin. Is it unfalsifiable? Maybe, but in philosophy we rely on the best explanation for what we observe. And why does it have to be a personal cause? Well, think about it. If a timeless, mechanical cause was just sitting there, its effect would be eternal too. For a temporal, time-bound universe to suddenly spark into existence, it strongly points toward a timeless cause actually making a choice to create.
So all of this deep philosophy and scripture culminates in one of my favorite classical Christian terms, aseity. It's a beautiful word. It simply means that God depends on absolutely nothing outside of himself for his existence. He is the fully self-existent foundation of all reality. Everything in the universe is dependent on something else. God alone is completely 100% independent.
But as the explainer makes so clear, we can't just leave this as a dry, intellectual brain teaser. Understanding God's eternal nature transitions us from argument into pure awe. Think about the daily application. It gives us total stability in an insanely unstable world, because we know God never changes. It replaces our human pride with a profound humility. It replaces our fear of hard questions with a quiet confidence. And ultimately, it leads to worship. Resting your entire weight on an everlasting God is the only true, practical response to truths this deep.
Which brings us right back full circle, back to that quiet living room, back to the father and the daughter. Gad, who made God? Only this time around, the father doesn't freeze. He has a profound, historically and logically grounded answer. He doesn't just have some memorized proof text. He has the deep certainty that God is not just one more object in the universe waiting around for an explanation.
He can look his daughter in the eye and explain that yes, every single created thing points backward to a cause. That's how the universe works. But only God points directly to himself and says, I am. He is the completely necessary foundation of existence, the eternal creator who made himself known to us in Jesus Christ, and he actually invites us to know him.
I really hope this explainer has brought some clarity to an absolutely mind-blowing topic. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative thought that the documentary hints at. It's a question that just naturally bubbles up after everything we've talked about today. If God has literally always existed, and if time itself is just a part of the created order, what exactly was he doing before creation? Let that sit with you for a bit and keep exploring. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.